My name is Sophia, and at 32 years old, I never expected my husband Ryan's family to try to kill me. Not literally, anyway. When we arrived at his parents' annual family gathering, I was hopeful this time would be different. I brought my own allergen-free dessert as usual, given my severe peanut allergy. When I saw my father-in-law Thomas dumping my food in the trash, I was confused. Hours later, I was fighting for my life in the ER. Before I continue this shocking story about my in-laws' betrayal, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt invalidated by family members. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I finally stood up for myself. Living with a severe peanut allergy has shaped my entire life. Since I was diagnosed at 3 years old after a terrifying reaction to a peanut butter cookie, my parents transformed our home into a peanut-free sanctuary. Growing up, I carried EpiPens everywhere, wore medical alert bracelets, and became hypervigilant about reading food labels. My childhood memories include multiple emergency room visits, terrified parents, and concerned doctors advising greater caution. The worst incident happened when I was 12. At a birthday party, I accidentally ate a brownie that contained peanut oil. Within minutes, my throat began closing, hives erupted across my skin, and my breathing became dangerously labored. By the time the ambulance arrived, my blood pressure had plummeted, and I was slipping into unconsciousness. The doctors later told my parents I came frighteningly close to death. After 3 days in the hospital, I developed a new level of anxiety about food prepared by others. Throughout my teens and 20s, I learned to navigate social situations where food was central. I'd eat before attending parties, bring my own safe snacks, and became skilled at deflecting well-meaning but potentially dangerous offers of food. Most people were understanding once I explained the severity of my allergy, though I occasionally encountered skepticism. "Is it really that serious?" or "a little bit won't hurt you" became phrases I dreaded hearing. Then I met Ryan 4 years ago at a work conference. He was charming, intelligent, and extraordinarily considerate about my allergy from the moment I mentioned it. On our first date, he researched peanut-free restaurants and called ahead to alert the kitchen. I fell hard for his thoughtfulness as much as his warm smile and quick wit. After 18 months of dating, he proposed during a weekend getaway, and I joyfully accepted. Meeting Ryan's family should have been a happy milestone. His father, Thomas, a successful businessman, seemed polite if somewhat distant during our first encounter. He asked practical questions about my allergy, but appeared to accept my explanations. His mother, Deborah, however, was a different story. Behind her picture-perfect smile, I sensed immediate skepticism. "You know, people didn't have all these fancy allergies when I was growing up," she remarked during our first dinner together. "We just ate what was served and built up immunity." Ryan quickly changed the subject, squeezing my hand under the table in silent support. Over the following months, several small incidents occurred that raised red flags. At a casual family lunch, Deborah served a Thai salad with crushed peanuts, claiming she completely forgot about my allergy. During Christmas, she questioned whether I was absolutely certain about my diagnosis, suggesting I might have outgrown it or been misdiagnosed. Each time, Ryan defended me, but also tried to smooth things over, attributing his mother's behavior to forgetfulness or old-fashioned thinking rather than deliberate disregard. "Mom grew up in a different generation," he'd explain. "They didn't understand allergies like we do now. She's trying in her way." I wanted to believe him. I wanted a harmonious relationship with my new family. So I smiled through the uncomfortable moments, always bringing safe food options to family gatherings and trying to connect with Deborah through other shared interests. Yet her comments continued. "Some people just want special attention," she once whispered to Ryan's aunt, unaware I could hear from the adjacent room. Or, in my day, we didn't make everyone change their lives because one person had a problem. Despite these tensions, I maintained hope that our relationship would improve with time. When the invitation arrived for the annual Thompson family reunion at Ryan's parents' sprawling suburban home, I saw it as an opportunity to strengthen bonds with the extended family, many of whom were far more accepting than Deborah. The week before the gathering, I meticulously prepared. I baked a delicious chocolate cake using special allergen-free ingredients, taking extra care to make it appealing to everyone, not just safe for me. I chose a beautiful outfit that I thought would meet Deborah's exacting standards. Ryan and I discussed strategies for navigating potential awkward situations, and he promised to stay close throughout the event. "It'll be fine," he assured me as we loaded the car that Saturday morning. "Jessica will be there with her kids, and you know she adores you." His sister had indeed been wonderfully supportive from our first meeting. As we drove to his parents' house, I felt genuinely optimistic. For years into my relationship with Ryan, surely his family would have accepted both me and the reality of my medical condition by now. How terribly wrong I was. The Thompson family reunion was in full swing when Ryan and I arrived at his parents' immaculately landscaped property. Cars lined the circular driveway, and the sounds of conversation and laughter drifted from the backyard. I clutched my carefully prepared allergen-free chocolate cake in its covered container, taking a deep breath as Ryan parked behind his cousin's SUV. "Ready?" he asked, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "As I'll ever be," I replied, mustering a smile that felt more confident than I actually was. The backyard had been transformed into an elegant entertainment space. White tents sheltered long tables draped in cream-colored linens, floral centerpieces dotted the surfaces, and string lights hung overhead for when evening would arrive. At least 30 people mingled around the space, some clustered near the bar, others seated at tables engaged in animated conversation. Ryan's cousin Amanda spotted us first, rushing over with genuine warmth. "Sophia, Ryan, you made it." She embraced me carefully, mindful of the cake container I was holding. "Is this one of your famous desserts? Everyone's still talking about that incredible berry tart you brought to Easter." Her enthusiasm boosted my confidence as more of Ryan's relatives approached to greet us. His cousin Michael and wife Vanessa asked about my recent promotion. His uncle George wanted to hear about our weekend trips to the coast. Ryan's sister Jessica appeared with her 2 children in tow, wrapping me in a tight hug. "So glad you're here," she whispered. "Mom's been in rare form today. Consider yourself warned." As if summoned by her daughter's comment, Deborah Thompson materialized before us, impeccably dressed in a designer pantsuit, her silver blonde hair perfectly styled. She air-kissed Ryan's cheeks before turning her critical gaze to me. "Sophia, dear, that's an interesting choice of dress for a family gathering." Her eyes flickered to the container in my hands. "And I see you've brought your special food again." "You know, I did prepare plenty of options for everyone." "It's just dessert, Mom," Ryan interjected. "Sophia made it to share with everyone." "How thoughtful," she replied, her tone suggesting the opposite. "Well, you can put it with the other desserts, though I doubt anyone will have room after my triple-layer chocolate mousse cake. It's been a family favorite for 20 years. Before I could respond, Thomas approached, martini in hand. He nodded curtly at us, barely making eye contact. "Ryan, Sophia, grab yourselves drinks. Dinner's being served in 30 minutes. He guided Deborah away, but not before I noticed her whispering something in his ear that made him glance back at me with an unreadable expression. "Don't let them get to you," Ryan murmured as we made our way to the bar. "Let's just enjoy seeing everyone else." The cocktail hour continued pleasantly enough as we circulated among the extended family. I placed my cake with the other desserts on a side table, making mental note of its location so I could find it later. When the dinner bell rang, we took our assigned seats at the main table, unfortunately directly across from Ryan's parents. The meal began with Deborah recounting elaborate stories of preparing the feast, emphasizing special ingredients and family recipes passed down through generations. Throughout the first course, I noticed her frequently leaning over to whisper to Thomas, both of them occasionally glancing in my direction. "Is everything all right with your salad, Sophia?" Deborah asked loudly when she caught me carefully examining the ingredients. "It's just a simple garden salad. Surely that meets your requirements." "It looks delicious, thank you," I responded politely, having confirmed it appeared safe. As the main course arrived, the tension slightly dissipated as conversations broke into smaller groups. Ryan's brother-in-law engaged me in a discussion about marketing strategies for his startup, providing welcome distraction from Deborah's scrutiny. Still, I couldn't help noticing her disapproving glances whenever I passed on certain dishes or asked about ingredients. In my day, she announced to the table during a momentary lull, people weren't so particular about food. We ate what was served and were grateful for it. Now everyone has some special diet or alleged sensitivity. She emphasized the word alleged while staring directly at me. Ryan's sister Jessica immediately changed the subject, asking her brother about our upcoming vacation plans, but the damage was done. I felt the familiar sting of being disbelieved and dismissed, a sensation all too common for those with invisible medical conditions. When dinner concluded, family members began bringing out the array of desserts. Jessica's children ran excitedly toward the display, pointing at the various options. I stood to retrieve my chocolate cake, hoping at least some people might try it. As I approached the dessert table, several relatives gathered around, examining the offerings. Ryan's cousin Michael's wife Vanessa noticed me approaching. "Is one of these yours, Sophia?" she asked kindly. "Yes, the chocolate cake with the berries on top. It's completely peanut-free, so safe for me, but everyone's welcome to enjoy it." A few people expressed interest, including Jessica and her children. Just as Vanessa was about to serve herself a slice, Deborah appeared with her own elaborate creation. "Here's the real showstopper," she announced, placing her mousse cake centrally on the table. A family tradition that everyone looks forward to all year. Those other desserts are lovely attempts, but nothing compares to Grandmother Thompson's recipe. She turned to me with a thin smile. "Sophia, dear, it must be so difficult having to make your own special food with all those substitutions. It can never quite taste like the real thing, can it? Such a shame you have to miss out on authentic flavors because of your fancy allergy." The dismissive way she said fancy allergy in front of everyone sent a wave of embarrassment through me. Several relatives looked uncomfortable, while others seemed to agree with Deborah's assessment. I felt my cheeks burning as I excused myself, mumbling something about needing the restroom. Once alone, I splashed cold water on my face and took several deep breaths. I could hear Ryan's voice through the door, clearly engaged in a heated but hushed argument with his mother. I wasn't going to let her ruin the entire evening. I straightened my dress, reapplied my lipstick, and prepared to return to the party with dignity intact. When I returned from the bathroom, composed and determined to salvage the evening, I immediately noticed something wrong at the dessert table. The space where my chocolate cake had been was conspicuously empty. Thinking someone might have moved it to make room for Deborah's mousse creation, I scanned the surrounding tables, but saw no sign of my dessert. "Looking for something?" Jessica approached, holding a plate with a slice of fruit tart. "My cake seems to have disappeared," I explained, continuing to search the crowded table. "That's strange. It was here just a few minutes ago. Maybe they moved it to the kitchen to make more room," she offered, though her expression suggested she wasn't convinced. We both headed toward the house, checking side tables along the way. As we approached the sliding glass doors to the kitchen, movement near the side of the property caught my eye. Through the window, I glimpsed Thomas, my father-in-law, hurriedly carrying what looked like my cake container toward the large trash bins behind the garage. "Is that?" Jessica began, following my gaze. "Your father with my cake," I finished, a mixture of confusion and disbelief washing over me. Without waiting for her response, I quickly made my way through the house and out the side door, Jessica following close behind. By the time we reached the trash area, Thomas was already walking back toward the house, empty-handed. His expression changed from startled to defensive when he saw us. "Thomas, did you just throw away my cake?" I asked directly, struggling to keep my voice steady. He straightened his posture, adjusting his designer watch. "I was simply clearing some items that were no longer needed." My cake wasn't no longer needed. I specifically brought it so I would have a safe dessert option, and others were interested in trying it too. I fought to control the tremor in my voice. "Why would you throw away food that wasn't yours to dispose of?" Thomas glanced toward the house, as if checking whether anyone else was witnessing our conversation. It was cluttering the dessert table. Deborah's arrangements are always perfect, and your additional item was disrupting the presentation. "Dad, that's ridiculous," Jessica interjected. "Sophia's cake wasn't harming anything." This was deliberately unkind. "I don't need to explain myself," he responded coldly. "This is my home, and I decide what stays and what goes." By this time, Ryan had noticed our absence and came looking for us. Seeing the three of us in what was clearly a tense confrontation, he rushed over. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us with concern. "Your father threw my cake in the trash," I explained, my voice finally breaking. He won't explain why, except that it was cluttering the dessert table. Ryan's expression transformed from confusion to anger. "Dad, is this true? You threw away Sophia's food?" "The cake she specifically made to be safe for her allergy." Thomas's jaw tightened. "Don't make this into something it's not, Ryan. It was just a cake." "It wasn't just a cake," Ryan countered, his voice rising. "It was the only dessert option Sophia could safely eat tonight. You know about her allergy." This was deliberately exclusionary and disrespectful. Their argument escalated, drawing attention from nearby guests. Several family members drifted closer, trying to discern what was happening. Among them was Deborah, who approached with an expression of practiced concern that didn't reach her eyes. "What's all this commotion?" she asked, placing a restraining hand on Thomas's arm. "Mom, Dad threw away Sophia's allergen-free cake," Ryan explained, still visibly upset. "The one she brought specifically because of her peanut allergy." Deborah's response chilled me to the bone. Instead of surprise or appropriate concern, a strange, satisfied smile briefly flickered across her face before she composed herself. "Oh dear, what a misunderstanding," she said, her voice saccharine. "But really, Sophia, sometimes we need to face our fears. Don't you think all this caution might be a bit excessive?" Her words hung in the air, loaded with implication. The gathering family members shifted uncomfortably, some looking embarrassed by the situation, others seemingly agreeing with Deborah's dismissive attitude. The division was painfully clear: those who understood the legitimacy of medical concerns and those who viewed them as exaggerations or bids for attention. Ryan's cousin Amanda stepped forward, breaking the awkward silence. "I have some fruit salad inside that should be safe, Sophia. Would you like some?" Her kindness nearly brought tears to my eyes, but the damage was done. I felt humiliated, invalidated, and increasingly isolated. What should have been a pleasant family gathering had devolved into a painful reminder that some people would never accept or respect my medical needs. "I think we should leave," Ryan said quietly to me, his arm protectively around my shoulders. "Don't be ridiculous," Deborah objected. "You can't leave now. We haven't even done the family photos or the anniversary toast for your aunt and uncle." "I'm sorry, but this has gone too far," Ryan replied firmly. When someone deliberately throws away food that was brought specifically because of a serious medical condition, it crosses a line. As we gathered our belongings and said hasty goodbyes to those family members who seemed genuinely sorry to see us leave, Jessica pulled me aside. "Something feels really off about this," she whispered. "Mom was acting weird about the desserts earlier. Stay in touch, okay? And let me know you're all right later." The drive home began in tense silence, both of us processing the evening's events. About 15 minutes into the journey, I noticed an uncomfortable sensation beginning in my throat. A familiar tingling started around my lips, followed by an intensifying itch across my skin. "Ryan," I said, my voice already changing as my throat began to tighten. "Something's wrong. I think I'm having a reaction." His eyes widened with alarm as he glanced at me, immediately noting the hives beginning to appear on my neck and arms. "Your EpiPen? Where's your EpiPen?" "Purse," I managed, already struggling to breathe normally. "But we need hospital." Ryan immediately changed course, heading toward the nearest emergency room, his knuckles white on the steering wheel as he placed a frantic call to 911 on speakerphone. As the dispatcher assured us an emergency team would be ready upon arrival, a terrifying thought crossed my increasingly foggy mind. What had I unknowingly consumed at the Thompson family gathering? The next few hours unfolded in a blur of emergency lights, medical terminology, and the persistent sound of monitoring equipment. By the time Ryan screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance, my breathing had become alarmingly labored. Hives covered most of my visible skin, and the familiar, terrifying sensation of my airways constricting intensified with each passing moment. Medical staff rushed out with a wheelchair as Ryan explained my situation in panicked fragments. "Severe peanut allergy. Symptoms started 20 minutes ago. She has an EpiPen but needs emergency care." Inside, the team worked with practiced efficiency. A nurse administered epinephrine while another started an 4-line. The attending physician, Dr. Patel, fired rapid questions at Ryan about what I might have eaten while monitoring my vital signs, which were becoming increasingly unstable. Blood pressures dropping, one nurse called out. "Pulse ox 84% and falling. Start her on oxygen and prepare for possible intubation," Dr. Patel ordered. "Sir, we need to know exactly what your wife might have consumed containing peanuts." Ryan ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "I don't know. We were at my parents' house for a family gathering." Sophia was extremely careful, as always. She only ate foods she confirmed were safe. The medication began taking effect, temporarily easing my breathing, but Dr. Patel's expression remained grave. "This is a severe anaphylactic reaction. We need to administer steroids and antihistamines and continue monitoring. She'll need to stay overnight at minimum." As the immediate crisis response transitioned to ongoing treatment, I drifted in and out of awareness, catching fragments of conversation and feeling the uncomfortable but necessary medical interventions. Ryan remained constantly at my side, alternating between reassuring me and making frantic phone calls. "Jessica, I need to know exactly what was served tonight," I heard him say during one such call. "Sophia's in the ER with a severe allergic reaction." "Yes, definitely peanuts based on what the doctor is saying." "No, that's impossible." She was so careful. Hours passed in the sterile hospital environment. The medication stabilized my condition enough that intubation wasn't necessary, but Dr. Patel explained I wasn't out of danger yet. "Anaphylaxis can have a biphasic response," she warned Ryan. "Sometimes symptoms return after the initial treatment. We need to monitor her closely." Through my medication-induced haze, I registered Ryan's sister Jessica arriving at the hospital, her face etched with worry and something else, determination. She pulled Ryan into the hallway for a private conversation, but their voices carried into my room. "Ryan, I found something you need to see," Jessica said urgently. "After you left, I was helping clean up, and I noticed Mom acting strangely around the dessert area. She was gathering plates really quickly, almost like she was hiding something." "What are you saying, Jess?" Ryan's voice sounded strained, exhausted. "I found this in the kitchen trash," Jessica continued. "It's a small container of crushed peanuts. And Ryan, it was hidden inside an empty container of the same chocolate Sophia's cake was made with." That doesn't necessarily mean anything," Ryan responded, though his voice lacked conviction. "There's more," Jessica said quietly. "Mom texted me afterward, but I think she meant to text Dad." Look, I couldn't see what she was showing him, but Ryan's sharp intake of breath was audible even from my bed. Crisis averted, she just needed to leave early, no real harm done. Now maybe she'll stop exaggerating about this allergy business and Ryan will see I was right all along. Ryan read aloud, his voice trembling with shock and mounting anger. Mom wrote this? She deliberately. The implications hung in the air, too terrible to fully articulate. My mother-in-law had intentionally contaminated my food with the one substance that could kill me, all to prove some twisted point about the legitimacy of my medical condition. Jessica entered my room, tears in her eyes as she approached my bedside. Sophia, I'm so sorry. I found evidence. I think my mother put crushed peanuts in your cake before Dad threw it away. Ryan followed, his face ashen. The text Jessica received. Mom all but admitted she tested your allergy. She actually thinks she did nothing wrong. Dr. Patel, who had returned to check my vitals, overheard the conversation. Are you saying someone deliberately exposed the patient to a known allergen? Her professional demeanor cracked slightly, revealing genuine alarm. That's not just dangerous, it could be considered assault. We've already found traces of peanut protein in her system. Could she have died? Ryan asked, his voice barely audible. The doctor's expression was grave. Absolutely. Anaphylaxis can be fatal within minutes without proper treatment. If you hadn't recognized the symptoms so quickly and gotten her here, yes, this could have had a much worse outcome. The weight of this realization descended on the room. Someone I should have been able to trust, my husband's mother, had deliberately poisoned me to prove a point. The betrayal was so profound, so incomprehensible, that my mind struggled to process it even through the fog of medication. Ryan sank into the chair beside my bed, taking my hand carefully around the foreline. I can't believe this, he whispered, more to himself than to me. My own mother, she could have killed you. As the night progressed, my medical condition stabilized, but the emotional aftermath was just beginning. Ryan alternated between sitting silently, stunned by his mother's actions, and pacing the room in barely contained fury. Jessica remained with us, fielding calls from concerned family members who had heard pieces of what happened. Aunt Laura and Uncle Steve are horrified, she reported after one such call. So are most of the cousins. But she hesitated, glancing at Ryan. But what? He prompted. Grandma Thompson and a few others are defending Mom, saying she was just trying to help and that no real harm was done. Jessica's disgust was evident. As if putting someone in the hospital is helping. The family was fracturing along lines of those who understood the severity of what Deborah had done and those who minimized or excused it. But as I lay in that hospital bed, connected to monitors and medication, one thing became crystal clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days after my emergency hospitalization, I was finally discharged with a prescription for prednisone, a new set of EpiPens, and instructions for follow-up care. The physical symptoms of the anaphylactic reaction had largely subsided, leaving behind exhaustion and a persistent soreness in my throat. The emotional wounds, however, were still raw and gaping. Ryan had barely left my side throughout the ordeal, sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair and coordinating with my workplace about my sudden absence. The anger that had initially consumed him had crystallized into a cold, resolute determination that I'd never seen before. We need to confront them, he said as he drove us home from the hospital. Both of them. What my mother did was deliberate, and Dad had to have known when he threw away your cake. Are you sure that's what you want? I asked quietly. They're your parents, Ryan. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. They stopped acting like parents the moment they put your life at risk. This isn't a minor disagreement or a personality clash, Sophia. My mother could have killed you. Back home, the reality of what had happened continued to sink in. Our phones buzzed constantly with messages from Ryan's extended family, some expressing genuine concern and outrage, others questioning whether we were overreacting. Ryan's cousin Amanda had sent a beautiful flower arrangement with a heartfelt note of support, while his Uncle George, left a voicemail suggesting we keep this unfortunate misunderstanding within the family. Jessica visited daily, bringing updates about the family fallout. "It's like a civil war," she reported. "Mom's telling anyone who'll listen that she was just trying to help and that your reaction wasn't that serious. She's painting herself as this concerned mother-in-law who's being villainized. And people are believing her?" I asked incredulously. "Some are," Jessica admitted. "Mostly the older generation who don't understand allergies. But others are absolutely furious with her, especially after I showed a few people her text message." 5 days after my discharge, Ryan decided it was time for the confrontation. He called his parents and requested a meeting at their home, his tone leaving no room for refusal. Jessica offered to accompany us for support, but Ryan felt this needed to be handled between the four of us. The drive to the Thompson residence was tense. I'd taken an extra dose of anxiety medication prescribed by my doctor, but my heart still raced at the thought of facing the woman who had deliberately poisoned me. Ryan reached across the console to squeeze my hand. "We do this together," he said firmly. "And then we decide what our relationship with them looks like going forward, if there's any relationship at all." Deborah and Thomas were waiting in their immaculate living room when we arrived. The formal space felt cold and unwelcoming, much like their expressions. Deborah sat primly on the edge of the sofa, while Thomas stood near the fireplace, arms crossed defensively. "Ryan, Sophia," Deborah greeted with artificial warmth. "I'm glad to see you're feeling better. This whole situation has been blown completely out of proportion." Ryan remained standing, declining their offer to sit. "Is that really how you see this, Mom?" "Sophia nearly died. She spent 3 days in the hospital fighting for her life because of what you did." "What I did?" Deborah's voice rose an octave in practiced indignation. "I simply prepared food for a family gathering, as I've done for 30 years. "Stop it." Ryan's voice was dangerously quiet. "We know you put crushed peanuts in Sophia's cake. We have your text to Jessica admitting it." Color drained from Deborah's face, but she quickly recovered. "That text is being completely misinterpreted. I would never deliberately harm anyone." "Then explain what you meant by crisis averted and Sophia exaggerating about this allergy business," Ryan demanded, pulling up the screenshot on his phone. Thomas finally spoke, his businessman's composure cracking slightly. "Deborah, what have you done?" "Nothing," she insisted, but her perfect facade was beginning to crumble. "I merely thought that if Sophia tried a tiny amount, she'd see her reaction wasn't nearly as severe as she claims. Many people outgrow allergies, or they're psychosomatic to begin with." "So you admit it," I said, finding my voice at last. "You deliberately put an ingredient in my food that you knew could kill me." "Kill you?" "Don't be so dramatic," Deborah scoffed, though uncertainty flashed across her face. "A little exposure therapy never hurt anyone." Exposure therapy is a medical procedure conducted by allergists in controlled environments with emergency equipment standing by, I explained, struggling to keep my voice steady. "What you did was attempted assault, possibly attempted murder." Thomas paled visibly. "Deborah, please tell me you didn't do this." Confronted from all sides, Deborah's carefully constructed justifications began to collapse. "Fine. Yes, I put a small amount of crushed peanuts in the cake batter. But only because I was tired of watching everyone walk on eggshells around Sophia. Tired of special accommodations and menu changes and constant attention-seeking behavior disguised as a medical condition." Her admission hung in the air, shocking in its callousness. Ryan's face hardened into an expression I'd never seen before. "And you, Dad," he turned to Thomas. "You threw away the cake. Did you know what Mom had done?" Thomas hesitated, guilt written across his features. I suspected something was wrong. Deborah had been acting strangely around the desserts. When I saw her adding something to Sophia's cake, I confronted her privately. She admitted what she'd done, and I disposed of the cake immediately. "But you didn't warn Sophia." Ryan's voice was laden with disgust. "You didn't tell her that Mom had contaminated food she might have already eaten." You protected Mom instead of protecting an innocent person from harm. I didn't think she'd actually eaten any yet, Thomas defended weakly. And I didn't want to cause a scene at the party. Heaven forbid we cause a scene, I said bitterly. Much better to let me go into anaphylactic shock in the car on the way home. Deborah attempted to regain control of the narrative. This is being blown completely out of proportion. You're fine now, aren't you? And maybe next time you'll be less dramatic about every little food ingredient. Something inside me snapped. After years of politely educating people about my condition, of quietly bringing my own food to gatherings, of thanking people profusely when they made even minimal accommodations, I was done. I nearly died, Deborah, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The emergency room doctor told us explicitly that without immediate treatment, I could have died. All because you decided your opinion about my medical condition mattered more than actual medical science. More than my life. I stood up, looking directly at the woman who had so casually endangered me. You don't get to decide which medical conditions are real. You don't get to test someone's allergy like some twisted experiment. What you did wasn't just misguided, it was cruel, dangerous, and possibly criminal. Ryan placed his hand on my shoulder, his support unwavering. We need to know right now if you understand the seriousness of what you've done, Mom. If you're genuinely sorry and ready to acknowledge how wrong this was. Instead of contrition, Deborah's expression hardened. I was trying to help this family. To stop this charade that's been dividing us. And now you're threatening me? Talking about criminal charges? After everything I've done for this family. Ryan shook his head in disbelief. That's your response? To make yourself the victim? Mom, you poisoned my wife. You put her life at risk to prove a point. It was a mother's concern, not poison, Deborah insisted, tears finally appearing, though whether from genuine emotion or tactical manipulation was impossible to discern. I've lost my son over a misunderstanding. This isn't a misunderstanding, Ryan replied firmly. This is a choice you made, and now you're facing the consequences. Until you can truly acknowledge what you did and show genuine remorse, we can't have a relationship with you. Either of you, he added, glancing at his father. Thomas, who had remained largely silent, finally spoke. Son, please. Your mother made a mistake, but cutting us off completely. A mistake is forgetting an appointment or saying something insensitive, Ryan interrupted. What Mom did was deliberate and dangerous. And you, Dad, you chose to protect her reputation over Sophia's safety. Those aren't mistakes. They're choices that reveal character. As we prepared to leave, Deborah made one final attempt to maintain control. If you do this, if you pursue this ridiculous vendetta, you'll destroy this family. Is that what you want? I turned back to face her one last time. Deborah, you nearly destroyed me. The fact that you still can't see that tells us everything we need to know. We left the Thompson house with the weight of finality hanging over us. In the car, Ryan released a shuddering breath, reaching for my hand across the console. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I never imagined they could do something like this. It's not your fault, I assured him, though my own emotions were a storm of hurt, anger, and lingering disbelief. But what happens now? Now, Ryan said with quiet determination, we protect ourselves, and we make sure they understand the seriousness of what they've done. No more excuses, no more sweeping things under the rug. As we drove home in the fading afternoon light, I realized we were entering uncharted territory, a painful journey of establishing boundaries, seeking justice, and ultimately finding a way to heal from a betrayal so profound it had altered the very foundation of our family relationships. The week following our confrontation with Ryan's parents unfolded like a surreal nightmare. After careful consideration and consultation with my doctor, who documented the severity of my anaphylactic reaction, we decided to meet with an attorney specializing in personal injury cases. Lauren Michaels, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, listened intently as we recounted the events, her expression growing increasingly grave. What your mother-in-law did constitutes assault, she explained, organizing her notes methodically. She deliberately introduced a substance she knew could harm you. The fact that your father-in-law knew and failed to warn you could potentially make him an accessory. We don't necessarily want to press criminal charges, Ryan explained, his voice strained. But we need them to understand the seriousness of what happened. And, honestly, we need protection. Lauren nodded understanding. Let's start with a formal cease and desist letter outlining the potential legal consequences. Sometimes that's enough to drive home the reality of the situation. We can also file a police report to create an official record, which gives you options if their behavior escalates. As we navigated the unfamiliar terrain of legal proceedings, the Thompson family fracture deepened into a chasm. Ryan's phone buzzed constantly with messages from relatives taking sides. His Aunt Patricia called, tearfully begging him to forgive your mother's misguided attempt to help. His cousin Michael texted support, writing, "What happened to Sophia was inexcusable. We're here for you both." Jessica became our most steadfast ally, keeping us informed of the narrative Deborah was spinning throughout the family network. She's telling everyone it was just a tiny amount of peanut, and that your hospitalization was an overreaction, Jessica reported during one of her frequent visits. She's painting herself as this concerned mother who's being persecuted for trying to help her son escape a controlling relationship. Controlling. I echoed in disbelief. Because I don't want to be poisoned at family gatherings? I know, Jessica sighed. It's ridiculous. But some people are buying it, especially the ones who've never understood food allergies to begin with. The situation escalated when Deborah began posting vague, martyred updates on social media, heartbroken when good intentions are twisted into something sinister. Family should forgive. Her carefully crafted posts garnered sympathy from distant relatives and friends unfamiliar with the full story, creating an alternative narrative where she was the victim of overreaction and ingratitude. Then came the veiled threats. First, a message from Thomas to Ryan, "Your mother is absolutely devastated. If you continue this vindictive path, remember that actions have consequences for everyone involved." Later, a family friend called to unofficially let us know that Deborah was considering her own legal action for defamation and emotional distress. They're trying to intimidate us, Ryan realized, his initial shock hardening into resolve. They still don't get it. This isn't about family drama or hurt feelings. This is about someone deliberately endangering your life. The stress began taking a physical toll. I developed insomnia, startling awake with panic attacks and vivid nightmares about being unable to breathe. Everyday activities became fraught with new anxiety. Eating at restaurants, attending work functions, even grocery shopping triggered hypervigilance about potential allergen exposure. The psychological trauma of being intentionally poisoned by someone I should have been able to trust ran deeper than I could have imagined. Ryan noticed my deterioration and gently suggested therapy. "This isn't something we should face alone," he said one evening, finding me crying silently in our bathroom after another nightmare. "What Mom did was traumatic. There's no shame in getting help." Dr. Eleanor Chin, a trauma specialist, helped me understand my psychological responses were normal reactions to an abnormal situation. When someone deliberately harms you, especially someone who should protect you, it violates your basic sense of safety in the world, she explained during our sessions. We need to rebuild that foundation. Through therapy, I began developing coping mechanisms for the anxiety and working through the complex emotions of betrayal. Ryan attended several sessions with me, strengthening our united front against the continuing family pressure. Meanwhile, our support network grew in unexpected ways. Ryan's sister Jessica and her husband became regular fixtures at our home, bringing meals and offering companionship. My parents flew in from Colorado, providing both emotional support and practical assistance as I recovered. Ryan's cousins Amanda and Michael publicly declared their support, challenging Deborah's version of events within family circles. Even professionally, I found solidarity. When I returned to work, my team surprised me with an allergen-free welcome back lunch and reassurances that they'd made the office kitchen a safer space. My boss, herself the parent of a child with severe allergies, became an unexpected advocate, allowing me flexible hours for therapy appointments and legal consultations. 2 months after the incident, our attorney filed the police report we'd been considering. The decision came after Deborah escalated her campaign, sending a group email to extended family members that minimized my reaction and implied I was manipulating Ryan against his family. The formal documentation of the assault provided a sobering counterpoint to her narrative. Detective Wilson, a methodical woman with 20 years of experience, interviewed us separately and together, taking detailed notes about the incident. "We take cases like this seriously," she assured us. Deliberately exposing someone to a known allergen is not a prank or a misunderstanding. It's assault. The investigation proceeded with statements from Jessica, who provided the damning text messages, and Dr. Patel, who confirmed the severity of my reaction and the presence of peanut protein in my system. The hospital records substantiated the life-threatening nature of the anaphylaxis. When Deborah received official notification of the investigation, her response shifted from defensive to panicked. Thomas called Ryan repeatedly, his voice losing its usual authoritative tone. "Your mother could face criminal charges," he said during one call. "Is that really what you want? To see your own mother prosecuted?" "What I wanted," Ryan replied steadily, "was for Mom to acknowledge what she did and sincerely apologize. What I wanted was for her to understand the seriousness of allergies so she'd never endanger anyone else this way. She's had multiple opportunities to take responsibility, and instead, she's attacked Sophia's character and tried to turn the family against us." The legal proceedings moved forward inexorably. Detective Wilson called to inform us that the district attorney had reviewed the evidence and found sufficient grounds to charge Deborah with assault. The gravity of potential legal consequences finally seemed to penetrate the bubble of justification she'd constructed around herself. Thomas called again, his approach now dramatically different. "Please," he begged, "tell us what we can do to make this right. Your mother is terrified." "She should be," Ryan responded, years of suppressed frustration evident in his voice. "She could have killed Sophia. Do you understand that yet? This isn't about family politics or preferences or traditions. This is about someone I love nearly dying because Mom decided her opinions mattered more than medical science." 6 months after the incident that had irrevocably altered our family dynamic, Deborah Thompson sat across from her attorney in the district attorney's office, finally confronting the legal reality of her actions. The composed, controlling woman who had orchestrated family gatherings with military precision for decades now faced the prospect of a criminal record and public humiliation. The evidence against her was substantial: the text message admission, multiple witness statements, medical documentation of my near-fatal reaction, and her own inconsistent explanations. Faced with this reality, she accepted a plea deal that included probation, community service hours specifically with allergy awareness organizations, and mandatory attendance at an educational program about severe allergies. As news of the legal resolution spread through the family, the unified front of denial that had protected Deborah began to crumble. Relatives who had initially defended her actions or minimized my experience now called or texted with awkward apologies and expressions of shock at the full story. The family narrative was shifting, and with it, the power dynamic that had allowed Deborah's behavior to go unchallenged for so long. Through it all, Ryan remained my steadfast partner, never wavering in his support despite the enormous personal cost of standing against his parents. "You're my family," he reminded me during a particularly difficult evening after a grueling deposition. The family we choose is sometimes more important than the family we're born into. As summer transitioned to fall, we began the delicate process of defining what our relationship with the Thompsons might look like moving forward, if any relationship was possible at all. The legal battle had created boundaries that Deborah could no longer ignore or dismiss, but the emotional wounds remained raw and deep. 1 year after the incident that nearly took my life, Ryan and I sat on our back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. So much had changed in those 12 months, not just circumstances, but fundamental shifts in how we viewed family, safety, trust, and our own resilience. "I got a call from Dad today," Ryan said, his fingers lightly tracing patterns on my hand. "He wants to meet." Just him, not Mom. Thomas Thompson had gradually separated himself from Deborah's narrative over the past 6 months. After her legal case concluded with the plea deal, he had reached out tentatively, first through Jessica, then with brief, formal emails expressing regret without quite reaching the threshold of a genuine apology. "Do you want to see him?" I asked, studying my husband's face for signs of the internal struggle I knew continued beneath his composed exterior. "I think I do," Ryan admitted after a thoughtful pause. "Not for reconciliation necessarily, but for closure, maybe. And he said he has something important to tell us both." 3 days later, we met Thomas at a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between our home and the house where Ryan had grown up. He looked older than I remembered, the confident businessman persona diminished by the events of the past year. He rose when we entered, his handshake tentative, his eyes unable to fully meet mine. "Thank you for coming," he began after we'd ordered coffee. "I've been trying to find the right words for months now." "Words for what, Dad?" Ryan asked, his tone neither hostile nor warm. Thomas took a deep breath. "For an apology. A real one, not the qualified statements I've been hiding behind." He turned to face me directly. "Sophia, what happened at our home that day was inexcusable. Deborah was wrong to put peanuts in your food, and I was wrong, criminally wrong, to throw away the evidence without warning you of the danger." The forthright admission surprised me after months of deflection and minimization. "What changed?" I asked. "Many things," Thomas replied, turning the coffee cup slowly in his hands. "The legal consequences, yes, but more than that, watching my family fragment. Seeing the genuine horror on Jessica's face when she described what happened. And honestly, the education course the court mandated. I had no idea how severe food allergies could be. No real concept of what anaphylaxis does to the body." He paused, visibly gathering courage before continuing. "But mostly it was confronting my own cowardice. I've spent 40 years enabling Deborah's controlling behavior because it was easier than standing up to her. I threw away that cake knowing it could harm you, and I said nothing because I feared her reaction more than I valued your safety. That realization has kept me awake night after night." His words hung in the air between us, raw with a vulnerability I'd never witnessed in this traditionally stoic man. "Where's Mom in all this?" Ryan asked, the question that inevitably shadowed any potential reconciliation. Thomas sighed heavily. "Deborah is struggling to accept reality. The legal consequences shook her, but she still views herself as misunderstood rather than wrong. She's attending the mandated counseling, but I don't know if she'll ever truly acknowledge the harm she caused." He straightened in his chair. "But my apology isn't contingent on hers. My actions were my responsibility, regardless of her influence." This separation, this individual accountability, represented a seismic shift in the Thompson family dynamic. For the first time, Thomas was defining himself outside the unit he and Deborah had presented to the world for decades. "I appreciate your honesty," I said carefully. "Genuinely. But trust isn't rebuilt in a single conversation." "I don't expect it to be," Thomas replied. "I'm not asking for forgiveness or for things to return to how they were. I just wanted you both to know that I understand now, and I'm truly, deeply sorry." As we parted ways, the interaction left me with complicated emotions, neither the cathartic reconciliation of movies, nor the righteous finality of complete estrangement. Instead, it offered something messier but perhaps more authentic, the beginning of a long, uncertain process of establishing new boundaries and expectations. While the relationship with Ryan's parents evolved in fits and starts, other aspects of life developed in unexpected directions. The support group I had started as personal therapy, a monthly meeting for adults with severe allergies facing skepticism or dismissal, had grown into a vibrant community. What began with 5 people sharing stories in a community center room now included 30 regular attendees, an active online forum, and educational outreach to local restaurants and schools. "You've turned something traumatic into something that helps others," Ryan observed after one particularly successful awareness event at the hospital where I'd been treated. "That's incredible. It helps me as much as anyone else," I admitted. "Every time someone shares their experience of not being believed, I feel less alone. Less like it was something about me specifically that made Deborah act the way she did." Indeed, hearing others' stories of family members who tested allergies, partners who hid ingredients, or coworkers who deliberately contaminated lunch areas had reinforced what my therapist had been telling me all along. The problem had never been me or my medical condition. The problem was a persistent cultural skepticism about invisible disabilities and medical needs that didn't fit neatly into others' understanding or convenience. Our personal relationships had transformed as well. Ryan's sister Jessica had become not just an ally, but a dear friend, our weekly coffee dates a highlight I looked forward to. Several of Ryan's cousins who had witnessed the aftermath of Deborah's actions had become more educated about food allergies, implementing changes in their own family gatherings to make them safer and more inclusive. Most significantly, Ryan and I had emerged from the crucible of family trauma with a deeper understanding of each other and of our priorities. The unquestioning way he had stood by me, chosen my safety over family harmony, and supported me through the darkest moments had strengthened a bond already built on love and respect. "We're creating our own traditions now," Ryan said as we prepared to host our first major holiday gathering, a deliberate alternative to his mother's tightly controlled family events. Our home was filled with friends, chosen family, and relatives who had demonstrated their support throughout the ordeal. The menu included dishes safe for everyone's dietary needs, with clear labeling and multiple options for those with allergies or restrictions. "It feels different," I observed, watching our guests mingle comfortably. No walking on eggshells, no underlying tension. "This is what family should feel like," Ryan agreed. "Safe, accepting, actually enjoyable." As I reflect on the journey of the past year, the lessons crystallize with surprising clarity. I learned that some people may never fully accept or understand your medical needs, and that's a painful reality to face, especially when those people are family. I learned that standing firm in your right to physical safety isn't making a fuss or being difficult, despite what a lifetime of social conditioning might suggest. Most importantly, I learned that surrounding yourself with people who believe you, who respect your boundaries, and who prioritize your well-being isn't selfish, it's essential. Sometimes the family you choose provides the unconditional support that should have come from the family you were born or married into. My relationship with Deborah will likely never heal completely. The trust destroyed by such a fundamental betrayal isn't easily rebuilt, if at all. But the boundaries established through that painful process have created space for healthier relationships to flourish. Ryan and I have found strength we didn't know we possessed, advocates we didn't realize we had, and ultimately, a more authentic way of living that honors both our needs and our values. The road hasn't been easy, and there are still difficult days. But standing in our kitchen watching Ryan laugh with Jessica as they prepare dessert, or receiving a message from someone in my support group about successfully navigating a challenging family situation, I'm reminded that sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to unexpected growth and connection. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when others dismissed your medical needs? Or had to create boundaries with family members who wouldn't respect your health and safety? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to have their medical needs taken seriously. Remember, protecting your health isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in navigating your own path to being believed and respected.